I want to dive back into wrestling right now because professional wrestling is, like we all are with this pandemic, is going through unprecedented times where they have to do these shows without crowds. You got the biggest pops of any superstar ever. I mean, the Stone Cold Steve Austin character generated the biggest crowd reactions pretty much ever. Do you remember your first mega pop from a crowd? The first time a crowd really just came unglued when your music hit?
I can't remember the first time with that music, but I'll never forget Chicago, going back to Rosemont Horizon, where I worked with Brett on 13. That was the place where I finally, was out there. We were working a tag,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't really on top yet. But when I got into the ring, things started happening, and people started making noise. And that's when, dude, if you're out there in the ring, if you're the wrestling fan that you say you are and growing up down there in the South, when you're out there in the ring, you're feeling everything, you're
Mm-hmm.
hearing everything, you're making decisions based on what is going on. And if you're not, you're doing it wrong. If you're just going through the motions, and going through the motions don't sell tickets. But when I felt and heard those people making the noise they're making in Chicago, that's when I knew that I was starting to get over with people, and they were starting to say, "Hey, man, this Stone Cold is something else."
So you mentioned that about working with the crowd and getting those reactions. Can you imagine having to work today without the crowd? Because what these guys and gals are going out there doing, and they're putting on an entertaining product, it's still good, but they don't have the crowd to play off of. How hard would that be?
It's extremely hard, and I take my hat off to the men and women down there that are doing it. But now that they've created Thunderdome, they can simulate, what the desired response would be, and so I think that's a tremendous help for me as I watched this past Monday. It adds tremendously to the viewing of it because wrestling without noise just ain't the same,
Mm-hmm.
and you really need a crowd for it. I remember back in the days when we used to do, those TV tapings in Memphis on Saturday mornings. There's only, I don't know, 200 people in there, but it's pretty intimate setting, and they make a little bit of racket, and you rely on those people. So it's a tough time for everything. But if you're into something where you're performing and you're used to doing it in front of a crowd, hey, it sucks. I went down there and cut a promo when that first happened, and I didn't even want to do the promo. I wanted to do an interview with Byron Saxton, but I went and did the promo for Vince and played it to a live crowd, and it was bad material to begin with. It was not good at all.
Man, so watching everything you just said, I mean, I feel everything you said, but watching the last year without crowds, Drew McIntyre, who has ascended to the WWE title, and his first breakthrough, his first big run with the title has been without crowds. So he's had to be the face of the company for the first time in this situation. I think he's done one hell of a job. I am curious to see what you think of the way Drew McIntyre has taken the ball and run with it.
Man, I give him an A plus. I love his promos. I love his character. He's well defined. He looks fantastic. Everything is put together from a work standpoint. Everything he does is very believable. He works from that kind of psychology. He's all about respect. When he
Mm-hmm.
talks about the title, it's about honor and respect. And I think he's doing a fantastic job. I watched his match with Keith Lee the other day, and I thought it was a hell of a match. And Keith Lee's a little bit of a limbo or transition with his character on the indie scene. That kid's a good worker,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not quite where Drew's at. And I thought it was a very competitive match. And with being in the Thunderdome, uh, with that noise, really helped the match. But he's doing about as good a job as you can ask anybody to do. And Drew McIntyre is the right guy at the right time for WWE, and he probably will be for quite some time.
So one of my favorite shows on WWE Network is your Broken Skull sessions, your interviews where it's just two guys sitting there shooting the shit about wrestling and just talking wrestling, how much they love the business. You've had The Undertaker on there multiple times. You had Drew on there. I believe you got Bailey coming up very soon. I love the one you did with Drew. It seems like you have a great respect for the fact that he came up as a hot shot and then went down a little bit, had to go find himself. It's kind of similar to your story as you were at WCW and you're a great wrestler. You went to ECW and found the character, and then you got to WWF. You were the ringmaster, but eventually you found it and broke through. Do you see a similarity the way he had to do things?
Yeah, there's a similarity in some respect, but he was truly the chosen one when Vince saw that guy, he goes, "This is going to be my guy." And then, didn't really go that way. And then they let him go. And then that's one of the things that I respect most about Drew. There's many things that I respect about him, but when he went down to the UK to go do that IWC ICW pay-per-view that they put on literally 2 to 3 weeks after WWE let him go, dude, he lit that place on fire and he turned it into a movement and a thing. And they brought his ass back, and he's been on fire, ever since. Whereas, kind of for me, when I got into WCW, I was a world television champion, and I won that from Bobby Eaton, and I didn't deserve to be in the ring with Bobby Eaton. But so they gave me a push, but it wasn't never like I was going to be Plan A or world champion or anything like that. So I don't ever think I was the chosen one. I think, I was always judged as being not marketable. But then again, it wasn't the right package being presented, in its day and time.
Right. So but you eventually figured out whatever it was with you. You figured it out, and then the rest is history. And I just want to reiterate right there, beautiful Bobby Eaton, one of my favorite wrestlers, incredible wrestler, Huntsville, Alabama. Bobby Eaton. I loved everything from the Midnight Express, and then his singles runs there and in WCW. I love Bobby Eaton. But I want to go from champ to champ now. We talked about Drew. Roman Reigns is somebody that, there were some chosen one elements to him too. He was a face. He main evented multiple WrestleManias. It never 100% clicked with fans. I mean, he's been a big star for a while, but now he is on the heel side doing this character where he's the head of the table, the tribal chief. I think it's some of the best work of his career. He's the Universal Champ. I think Roman Reigns is also doing a hell of a job at the top of the card. I'm anxious to see what you think about his work right now.
Well, his work has always been really good. But his character work, now that we kind of really know who he is, and Vince back in the day never would pull the trigger on turning him heel because he's a good-looking guy. He can work. You see him walking through an airport, like, God dang, who's that? He's got to be a professional athlete. So he had the looks, the size, the work, everything. But because Vince was pushing him so hard, people rebelled and wanted to not like him. But Vince wouldn't really commit to turning him heel. And when they tried, it was almost like a half-assed effort. So now with Paul Lee, I think Paul Lee helps, I don't want to say ground, but it gives him a base. And I think he enhances Roman. Or now that he's aligned with Paul, it's like, oh, okay, it's just a different spin. But Roman's doing the work. They're talking together, but the presentation is authentic. And now it's coming off like it should.
I think one of the best ways to put it is when you cross over and you align yourself with Paul Heyman, it legitimizes you as a heel. It legitimizes you as somebody who's a no-good son of a bitch, where Roman kind of needed that to get him started. Now, he's coming off as a no-good son of a bitch on his own quite well, but Paul Lee is what kind of legitimizes that and says, well, if he's with Paul Heyman, this guy's an asshole.
Well, and so we've got to give Paul Lee a little bit of credit because, that's a great manager's job, but to keep the attention and the focus on the guy, and that's what's being done. But I think, I agree with you. I think that this is Roman's best work.